Good morning, everybody. Could you please confirm if you can hear me, maybe in the chat box? I just want to be sure we have audio. If I can get responses in the chat box, I'll be grateful. I just want to be sure everybody can hear me. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for the responses. Okay, so my name is Laumi, and today we are having our third edition of our BizNurture Growth Series webinar. We started this towards the end of last year, and this is the third one we're having. Today, our speaker will be Emi Obayemi, and I'll be reading his profile, right? But before we go on, I think we chose this topic specifically. We chose this topic specifically because there's a saying that says, plans are useless, but planning is everything. So you can have a very fantastic plan for your business, and at the end of the day, that might not be what will happen. Because I mean, we all experienced how 2020 went. A lot of us had huge and interesting plans of what we wanted to achieve in the year, but the incidences and all the things that happened in the economy as a result of the pandemic changed a lot of plans that many organizations had. But the truth is that the planning process is indispensable. Why? Because that will help you adjust easily and quickly to whatever situation comes your way. So that is why I say plans may not be everything, but the planning process itself is essential. It's indispensable. You can't do without it. And so that's why we chose this topic, planning for growth in 2021, to be taken in January, so that as we launch out properly into the remaining months of 2021, we will all be well positioned. Our businesses will be well positioned for the growth that we all so desire. Okay, so I'll go on to read Okoyemi's profile. If you could please go to the next slide. All right, so okay, the next slide talks a bit about the BizNurture. So can you please go back to the previous slide? Let me just introduce the company. Okay, yeah, so BizNurture is an alternative financial service provider. So we lend to firms. We believe in SMEs, and our goal has been like that for the past couple of years. We are a lending venture to small and medium organizations, and we are incorporated in Nigeria. You can apply for, and if you have joined us from the beginning of, at 11 o'clock, we have been showing a couple of products that we have where business owners can access to business loans, particularly just to help you grow your business. So to apply, you can get to our website at biznurture.com, and the phone number displayed on your screen, and you could always also send an email to loan@biznurture.com, so where you get all the information. At the end of the presentation, we'll talk a bit more about our product again, just to give a bit of recap. So without further ado, I would like to talk about our speaker. I would like to just quickly read the profile of our speaker. Thank you. Next slide, please. Okay. Okay, so our speaker is Okoyemi Obayemi, and is the Chief Information and Operations Officer at BizNurture Financial Services Limited. Okoyemi is a business transformation professional. He enjoys working with the intersection of business and technology. He holds a bachelor's degree in computer science from the University of Lagos and a master's degree in business administration from Cranfield School of Management. He started his career in banking operations, and soon after, technology infrastructure project support in Bank PHB, which is now called Keystone Bank, before he moved on to Accenture, where he worked as a technology analyst and consultant. After his MBA, he was hired to set up and run the business transformation team at Access Bank. He was the head strategy and planning at Access Bank before he ventured into entrepreneurship. He currently manages technology and operation at BizNurture Financial Services. Okoyemi is skilled in strategic management and technology operations and delivery. His industry experience cuts across management, technology consulting, and financial services. He has also consulted for businesses in telecoms, manufacturing, public sector, and not-for-profit sector. So with great pleasure and excitement, and of course, we're looking forward to learning a lot from his wealth of experience, gleaning insights and core ideas of how we are going to make sure we plan 2021 properly for business growth. So with great pleasure, I'll call on Okoyemi to begin the webinar today, the workshop. I like to call it a workshop because it's going to be more than a delivery of a talk. We're going to have your pens and jotters. If you don't have that, quickly just get your pens and jotters, because I'm sure there's a load of information that you'll be having today, to really jot down, and that will be very useful to you. So you're welcome, Okoyemi.
Hi, Launi. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, and one of our attendees, Babatunde Rajesh, sent a message that he couldn't hear. I just want to confirm that you can hear now. Okay, I'll assume you can hear. So good morning, everyone, and thanks again for joining us. Before I go ahead, allow me, or Deborah, can I share my screen? Is that okay?
Yes, you can. If Deborah would stop sharing her screen so that you can share yours.
Thank you. Okay, Deborah, can you enable participant sharing of screen, please? Okay, thanks again. So I'm going to commence speaking. So today, this is the outline we're going to be going through. I'm going to do a short introduction, basically speaking to the topic we have before us today. I'll take us through the annual planning process, which really is the crux of the reason why we're here today. Excuse me. And then we'll talk about managing execution of the annual plan, because when you plan, you should execute. Then we're going to have some questions, and I have a concluding word. So by way of introduction, again, the topic is planning for business growth. And the reason why I have highlighted planning and business growth, because I think those are the two keywords, or those are the keywords we should be looking at. And so the focus of today's session is on planning, planning for the year. But we don't start with plans, right? So there is a build up. We start by a plan outlines actions required to reach goals. Okay, so before we can talk about plans, we have to have goals. And we don't just draw our goals out of thin air. Goals should be strategy aligned. Goals should be focused on strategy, right? So what this means is that strategies precede plans. So essentially, I'm trying to say that you have to have a strategy, in this case, for business growth, and then you go into planning for business growth. So basically, like I said, a couple of things. It's to note that though we're talking about planning or annual planning today, strategy precedes planning. So even though you're here today to discuss planning, I'd like to say that you should have something that your plan will be based on, and typically that's a strategy. And so very quickly, I'll say that there has to be a strategy in place to grow the business. And business growth will mean different things to different people, particularly, depending on the circumstances of your business at this point in time. Goals have been defined based on the strategy, and the plan of action is being documented, which is our reason for being here today. So I will go quickly into the annual planning process. So the annual planning process, so this is a suggestion, and I'm making this as, not too prescriptive, because I realize that while most companies may end their financial year with the calendar year, that's at December, not every company does that, okay? But whenever your financial year ends, my suggestion is that you start your annual planning 3 months before the end of the financial year. If your financial year, for instance, ends in December, I will say start late September, early October. Then how does the annual planning process start? It starts with some analysis. Typically, the first thing I will do is I'll do some external review. And this is important because every business is situated within some sort of context, right? So let's take your business. You operate at some part of the country, Lagos, Port Harcourt, Abuja, wherever you may be. There are dynamics, that affect all of us. There are dynamics, particular to that environment. It could be security, we all know what inflation is. So all of that, you need to understand the dynamics of the operating environment so that you can begin to, try to answer the question, how do I win within this environment? Because that's the essence of strategy. And in order to review the Excel environment, the two selected tools I want to touch on very briefly. The first is, the PESO, and second is the Porter's 5 forces. Excuse me, please. So let's talk about the PESO. It's right here before your screen: political, economic, sociocultural, technological, legal, environmental. This is not an election year, but if it was an election year, we will see huge impact of politics on business. And even though it's not an election year, the fact that we have, the National Assembly, the Senate, and the executive being controlled by the same party means that there are certain impacts on business. So for instance, if you are into the agricultural space, chances are, you may be smiling more than people in some other sectors. Why? Because there's a huge focus, right? And there's economic. I talked a bit about inflation. There's GDP growth, and there's policies, macro policies that will affect things. There's sociocultural. I was having, some thoughts the other day. I was asking myself, is COVID a health issue, or is it a social issue, or is it somewhere in between? Because I'm convinced that if we would follow the social norms being described, then maybe we can better manage the virus, right? So, sociocultural is quite important. We're talking about health as affects business. We're talking about, demographics. We're talking about the age. We have a relatively young population in Nigeria. What does that mean for your business? Technology, more advancement in technology, adoption of technology. What does that mean for your business? Legal as well, this will speak to regulation. Are you in a regulated industry? If yes, what are the regulations? How does it affect you? And environmental, if you were trying to go into, business to do with fossil fuels, and there's a lot of talk about, sustainability, or you're going into a business that has to do with, felling trees in the forest, and they're talking about deforestation, what does that do to your business? So it's key to understand all of these factors. The next I'll talk about very quickly is the Porter's 5 forces. Essentially this allows you to look at your competition, because you're not alone in that space. You're competing with, businesses. It looks at, suppliers, right? What's the pressure you have from suppliers? You know, how can you strategize to take advantage of, you know, your suppliers? And you're looking at buyers as well. Your buyers have a lot of power, you know, over you in your business. Threat of substitution, what you're offering, is it easy to offer? Do people easily have an alternative? If they do, how will that impact your strategy? Threat of new entrants, is a barrier to entry low? Can people easily come into that space? The stronger these forces are, you know, the more, I'll say the less profitable, excuse me, the less profitable that industry will be, that business will be. Does that mean you need to begin to diversify? You know, so I mean, it's important to do this to get the context of, you know, your operating environment at that point in time, and based on that to, you know, to take the right decisions for your business. So after you conclude the external review, the next thing is to do some internal review. And you have to basically look at your business, you know. So you've looked outside the business, you want to look at the business. I mean, there's so many things to look at, but I've given a few suggestions here. So you want to look at business performance against goals. You know, we're coming to the end of the year. Remember, I said you have to, I'm suggesting starting 3 months at the end of the year. So the question is, what were the goals we set for ourselves? What were the targets? And this will be across, you know, different dimensions. Some are going to be financial, you know, revenue, profit, cost. You know, others are going to be non-financial, right? So what were the goals we set? How are we tracking along in, you know, in achieving these goals, against these goals? You know, what are our business capabilities? How are we in marketing? How's our technology? You know, how's our risk management? You know, so how are people? Do they have the skills that they need? You know, you look at all of those things. And after you look at all of those things, the next thing, which for me is the essence of analysis, because after you've identified, you know, what's going on around the business and within the business, you know, the all important question is, so what? So what, meaning, what do I do with all of these information? You know, if you can answer the question, so what, then you're on your way to creating a great plan for the year. And so what basically means you're going to identify the implications for your business. So as an example, if you see that, you know, you're unable to do certain things as a business based on internal review because certain skill sets are lacking, implication could be training, it could be hiring, you know, it could be getting a consultant in to come and do a project, you know, something like that. So that's just a quick example. The other thing that the analysis will do for you is it's going to, you know, it's going to provide insights into your business. You're going to get to know your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So typically strengths and weaknesses will come from your internal review, and opportunities and threats will come from external review. So we continue the planning process. One of the things that you want to do is to validate that, you know, your overall strategy is validated in light of the strategy you just carried out. So what do I mean by this? Usually and typically, you know, you don't just create a strategy for 1 year. You know, I would suggest that the minimum should be 3 years. And I've seen companies do 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. It all depends on how far you can see into the future and, you know, I mean, and how the business is run, you know. So basically, when I say validate your overall strategy in light of the analysis carried out, you know, strategy is a living document. So you're asking the question, based on these analysis, is my strategy still fit for purpose, right? Should I be making amends on my general strategy, or, you know, is it still good to go, right? So the question is asked, do we need to make changes in our strategy and consequently our plan based on the outcomes of analysis carried out? So that's something, you know, I'll encourage you to do as you plan for the year, as you run through your 3-year strategy, 5-year strategy, or whatever length your strategy is, as you are planning for the year ahead. You know, you You don't have to necessarily follow doggedly what's in your strategy document, because circumstances might have differed significantly, based on dynamics. And I'm going to give a very quick example. Sometimes last year, Lagos State came out with this policy, or shall I say this rule, that forced the providers of transportation on bikes and all of that out of business, right? Incidentally, today I understand that the unregulated nature of the business is back, meaning people just driving their bikes and carrying people on Okadas everywhere. But those guys that that were I can say were regulated, they were structured, they could even provide data to the government, because you book for your ride via apps, you put them out of business. Okay, so when they were writing their strategy at the beginning of last year or 2 years, or whenever they wrote the strategy, they will have written the strategy based on the fact that possibly due to the risk of government intervening, but when government intervene, what would you do? Would you restructure your business into a logistics business? Would you choose to go to another location, right? So that's just a quick example of validating your overall strategy in light of current situation and in light of the review that has been done. So after that is done, the next thing you need to do is define priorities for the year. So based on your analysis, what must you do to get close to achieving your strategic goals, right? So you have goals for your business based on the review we've just done. What's priority? What is key? What must come first? If we had to take a portfolio approach to allocated funds, what are we going to allocate funds to? What are we going to give our time to? What are we going to pay attention to? What are you going to use our energy for? That's defining your priorities and following through with it. The next thing is to define measures and metrics for our strategic priorities. Measures, are generic, while metrics are specific. That's your KPI. Pretty much your metrics will keep you honest. It will help you know how you're tracking towards achieving, your business goal, right? So when you define priorities, you need to append measures and metrics so that you can check how you. So for instance, let's talk about profit. You want to be profitable, and you think, okay, for us to achieve what we set out for, we must grow, our profits this coming year by 50%. That's a metric right there. And so as you and that 50% will translate, to numbers, right? So as you go through the year, you can always look back and say, based on how we're tracking along, are we going to achieve this 50% growth on the current year's numbers or on last year's numbers? Okay, so we're going to continue. The next one is, once you've set that at a corporate level, the next thing to do is to cascade it down to departments. At this time, I'd like to just pause very quickly and do a quick survey. Very quickly, can you just type the number of people in your organization into the chat? If it's just you're starting out, just put 1. If you have 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 people, just put that number. I want to get a sense of how to prioritize the different parts of this presentation. Hello? Hello?
Hello, can you hear you?
Okay. I just wanted some feedback. In your organization, how many are you? How many staff? What's your organization size and numbers? I just want to get a sense. Okay, 15, 5. Okay, so 15 and 5. So I would keep that in mind. Okay, so I mean, for a 5-man organization, for instance, I mean, you still have departments, but the question is, you know, to what extent are your departments established, right? And that's why I wanted to, you know, to get that feedback. But irrespective of how small or how large your organization may be, you have to cascade down your priorities to departments because, you know, when I say to departments, I'm assuming, you know, 2 levels within the organization, meaning you have, you know, the business and then you have the functional areas or departments that, you know, work to achieve the goals of the business and support, you know, the management team in driving the business. So based on the priorities, what must each department do, right? Again, going back to, you know, my, yeah, thanks for that, Paul. So going back to my, you know, example on profit, the question will be if, you know, you're trying to grow profit by 50%, you know, what must the sales team do? You know, how can HR support that, you know, in terms of maybe hiring people? What should, you know, technology do to drive that? What can marketing, you know, do to drive that? And, you know, the list goes on and on. So basically you need to cascade down to departments. I just want to quickly, you know, give a quick word about budgets here, because at this point in time, you want to, you know, you want to ensure that as you talk about the great things you want to do in the year, you also think about financial implications. And when I say financial implications, you're looking at, you know, the cash you have, the cash you're going to make, you know, in profits, and, you know, what you need to spend to basically implement your strategy. And so it's good to know that the budget is a financial plan, and that budget should be aligned to, you know, your annual plan. And so do not leave out the financial bit of it as a separate activity or as a future activity. It has to be done at the same time. And I'm just giving a bit of advice here, as you can see. You know, it's good to draft and release budgeting guidelines so that departments are guided in documenting their budgets. That's very key. Okay, let's go ahead. When you do that, the next thing is to finalize the annual plan, and, you know, what will that look like? So we talked about cascading to departments. So departments just don't run off to do what they want to do. They have to report back into, you know, the central team managing the strategy. This may be, you know, a head of strategy. This may be the CEO or whoever it is that is responsible. It may be a team of 2 or 3, you know, the management team. And so you have to put all of that back. You have to finalize, you know, the plan, finalize the budget, expense and revenue budgets, you know, breaking down your expense into OPEX, CAPEX, or whatever works for your business in terms of how your expenses will be. And then you have to finalize your project or key initiatives. Chances are that you're not going to achieve your goals by just coming to the office and doing operational work. Chances are, you know, you'll be required to implement some projects or initiatives. Then you have to build a roadmap. A roadmap basically tries to look at the year and prioritize or sequence, you know, your projects or initiatives. Of course, you have to obtain management approval. Depending on how structured your business is, you should also be obtaining board approval. And at this point, I'd like to say a very quick word about performance management. And when I say performance management, you know, when I talked about metrics earlier when I was referring to the business, but ideally, you know, we also should cascade these KPIs to our employees, because our employees are the ones that will do the work. And that's why we say that, yeah, thanks for the poll. And that's why we say that, you know, employees are the soul of the business. They are key to the business. And so you need to be certain targets or metrics which ensure that the business objective will be met. And so you have this sort of cascade where the business has goals, and based on that targets or metrics, departments take their metrics from that, and then employees take their metrics from the departmental metrics. I just wanted to say that, planning for performance is also a key part of the annual planning process. So I'm just going to do a very quick high-level snapshot of what this may look like. So I don't know if you can see this text. It's a bit small, but I'm hoping you can see it. But basically, you have your vision as an organization. You have questions driving strategy. I talked about external review trends, and based on that, you come up with a few strategic initiatives. So that's an example, your 3-year or 5-year, from your 3 or 5-year strategy. And then, we're looking at how the annual planning process fits into the strategic management process. And basically, on an annual basis, you go back into this document, your strategy document, you do your reviews, your external review, look at the current state of the business, of the environment, and you come up with a plan. So what am I going to do this year, right? So this is usually typically annually, shorter term. And so, I talked about initiatives, I talked about measures. So for instance, this could be sample actions or initiatives. We'll talk about measures, generic, we'll talk about targets, then milestones. And it's good to also assign responsibility, who's going to do what. So this is sort of, a snapshot of what I've been discussing in the last couple of slides as to how you, translate your multi-year strategy into, into what you have to do for the year in view for the current year. And that will be your annual plan. So I'm going to talk about execution, and which frankly is more important than planning. At this point in time, let me just, say, some of the key things I've said. The first thing, we're talking about planning for business growth. The first thing is, if you are going to achieve business growth, you should have a strategy, pointing to that and addressing that. Next is, you need to have a plan. And now we're at the point where we're saying you need to execute the plan, right? And so, so plans have to be implemented. And, one of the things you can do or you should do is to put a structure for managing implementation of the plan. I want to make some suggestions on considerations. Again, I'm not going to be prescriptive here because I can see that we have anywhere from 5 to 15, the larger the organization, chances are the more likely you can put in more structures. But when you have a 3-man team, a 5-man team, a 7-man team, then, some of these things may not, how elaborate you choose to go in your structuring will be different. But basically, there are a couple of things you should do. The first is, goals and metrics, right? You should have goals, so what are the strategic goals and associated measures and metrics, right? What are we trying to do here? It's important because not every, it will, we would probably assume that implementation, would only consider projects, because when we talk about implementation, look to say, oh, it's projects and initiatives, but no, we have goals as well that are not tied to projects. So the question is, what are those goals and metrics? Those need to be checked from time to time during the year. The next thing is the roadmap, So now we'll talk about projects and initiatives. What projects or initiatives have been planned for the year? Timelines. Where it's a project or initiative, when should the project or initiative be complete? When must it be done? Are there things that must be done in January, that must be done in February, that must be done in Q1? The roadmap and timelines also speaks to sequencing. If there is you know, a project that is dependent on another one? When must we complete, you know, the predecessor project before we can, you know, complete a dependent project? So whatever structure should have, you know, goals and metrics, you know, roadmap, timelines, continuing accountabilities and responsibilities. You know, who should we speak to about progress? Basically, who's going to do the work? That's responsible. And then who are we, you know, who is ultimately accountable? That's usually one person. You know, who am I going to hold, you know, accountable for delivery, right? So that's responsibility and accountabilities. Then monitoring, you know, typically you need a process of validating that, you know, the projects are being done and that we're also tracking along towards, you know, our goals and our metrics. So, you know, again, this could be as basic as calling people up and saying, "Oh, you're supposed to be working on project X. You know, where are you?" On the flip side, you know, what we could also do is, you know, be elaborate, have a product, I mean, a web application managing your projects. You know, people can, you know, see what's going on, people update their progress and things like that. Again, it all depends on what works for your organization. The last thing I want to say here is there has to be reporting. How will the leadership, how will management be informed about progress? You know, how would we know things are being done? And it's also important because oftentimes you need management to approve something. You need management to intervene because, you know, there's some roadblocks, there's some issues, there are risks, you know, so reporting is quite key. So these are things to consider in managing execution of the plan. My recommendation is that for this to work, you need to establish a cadence, a rhythm, you know, of managing execution. So you don't do it randomly. You don't do it when you feel like. You don't do it when you are prompted. It has to be established. For instance, you know, every Monday we're going to review what was done the last week and then, you know, discuss the plans for the week, or you choose to do it on Friday or midweek, you know, depending, or okay, we're going to report to management on Friday. All reports must come in on Thursday so that we can, you know, put put it together. Again, it's whatever works for your organization. The other thing I'm going to add is that to it's important to have periodic business review meetings where the overall performance of the business is reviewed and changes are made. You know, so these are not necessarily, you know, performance review sessions which will focus on numbers. You know, you want to, I mean, my recommendation is quarterly, you know, so, you know, Q1, you have your Q1 business review, you know, half year, you have your half year business review, Q3 business review, and of course, you know, you will do that in a full year doing annual planning. And so you want to periodically check how are we tracking along, you know, and these are meetings where, again, you know, strategy is quite fluid. You know, yes, you've documented the strategy, but what if after Q1, you know, things are radically different? You know, what should you do? You know, to ensure that you know, you can bring the business back on track for the rest of the year. So, Deborah, I'm going to yield the floor to you now for, I mean, to take any questions we may have at this point in time. So questions, please. Hello? If you can hear me, you can signify by talking or by okay. There are a few questions. Okay. I'm going to start with these, and you also may type in your questions into the chat. So the first question says, you mentioned CAPEX in your presentation. Please, what is that? So CAPEX stands for capital expense. So I, you know, refer to projects and initiatives. Operational expense are, you know, your day-to-day spend. So we need to pay rent, we need to pay, you know, salaries, we need to do excuse me, we need to do, our typical, marketing spend and, whatever is operational for your business, that's spend. But when you have, special projects, you want to implement a piece of technology, you want to build, acquire a new farm, assuming in agriculture. You want to acquire some piece of material that will make processing faster. That will be your CAPEX. So CAPEX stands for capital expense. Excuse me, please. You mentioned projects and initiatives. What are those? How do they relate to goals? How does a small business differentiate between projects, goals, and initiatives? Must a small business have all these three? Okay, I mean, those are good questions. Okay, what are projects and initiatives? I will say a project or an initiative. For the purpose of this presentation, I'm using them interchangeably. But in larger organizations, an initiative will be, a smaller, or I don't want to use the word minor because that could come across as being not unimportant. A minor endeavor, while a small endeavor, while a project is quite bigger. But essentially, whether project or initiative, they are what I would call vehicles that help you achieve a specific goal at that point in time, right? So for instance, I gave a few examples when I was trying to explain CAPEX. You want to purchase and implement a piece of machinery, you want to build some software or buy and implement, or, you want to, do something out of your typical day-to-day, may or may not cost money, it may just be, I need to put people on this project to get it done. That will be, a project. And unlike your day-to-day tasks, which will continue as long as the business exists, a project typically will have, started and end date, have an objective, and, it's expected that once the project is done, sooner or later, the objectives for implementing the project will be realized. Okay, and how do they relate to goals? Good question. So when a business says, for instance, we want to, so let's assume a business goal is we want to, improve, our user experience. And in terms of implications, perhaps that, I'm giving examples here because I think that's the best way to explain this and not just, speak theoretically. You want to improve user experience. An implication, depending on the business, might be, implement better technology. Sorry, let me just scroll back up. More questions are coming in, and I'm losing the question. So yeah, how the goals, relate to projects and initiatives. And so if that objective is to, improve user experience, and it is determined that improved user experience will maybe result in a customer satisfaction, of, I don't know, 80% or an increase of 50% on current levels. And it is so that's a metric right there. So I've talked about the goal, which is, basically focus on user experience, the metric, which is talking about, increasing customer satisfaction by a certain percentage. In this case, the project may be, we need to implement a standard customer service desk. Or it may be, we need to implement different channels through which our customers can engage with us. And so from that perspective, I mean, you can see the tie-in between a project, the goal, and project and initiatives. How does a small business differentiate between project goals and initiatives? I am guessing, my last response might have addressed that. Must a small business have all these three? I would say it is good that a small business have these three, but you can't afford to be overly elaborate. And the reason is because, if you are overly elaborate, then you may find yourself constantly planning and structuring and more focused on the structure as opposed to actually doing the work of the business. My advice will be that, it's always key to have, the reason why we talk about planning, for business growth is because there is a business, right? If there isn't a business, then we will not be planning. So I feel like the focus should be on the business, but definitely you need to have goals. You should have projects you're working on, to grow your business. Yeah, but they should be limited, and I think that should be natural in the sense that, um, a small business should not have as many goals and initiatives as a big business will do. Okay, as an SME, what if I don't have a management team or staff, and I'm the only one in my business? How do all these apply? Yeah, I will say they still apply, um, in the sense that, you know, should you have a vision for your business? The answer is yes. Should there be a strategic direction, which may or may not be expressed in a form of document? The answer is yes. Should you set targets for yourself, as an individual? The answer is yes. And all of these are important because as a business grows, what structure will the people you bring on board, what will they fit into? Right? I mean, yes, you may be running the business alone right now, but I want to believe that, um, you're not going to be running the business alone forever, or you won't be alone in the business forever. So I will say they apply, but again, I think it's a function of, um, there's a saying that, that goes by form defines function. If you're just a one, man running the business, then again, you typically will not have the time to do all of these things in a lot of detail, but they should be done in some shape or form. Okay, I'm going to scroll down now. Thank you for your presentation. When you spoke about organization size, you mentioned structures. For a business that has less than 5 staff, how do you put structures in place? Again, you have to, so let me guess, and so this may be, I'm going to give different scenarios. So you could have 5 friends coming together to start a business. And so these 5 could be 5 co-founders, or it could be 2 co-founders and 3 staff, one founder, 4 staff, and that in itself will begin to give a sense of structure. So let's talk about the first scenario of 5 co-founders. I think the reason why you have as many as 5 co-founders, which I think is too many, but if you have that many, is because they bring different things to the table. So that in itself begins to give a direction towards a structure. What you bring to the table will naturally be what you would manage, right? So if you've been someone in sales and marketing, chances are that's what you're going to, to handle, right? I'm talking about in terms of assigning responsibilities now. In terms of managing, even if you have 5 co-founders, someone has to run the business. Okay, so we're going to have someone as the CEO, or managing director, and others will report into that person. And when we now, in my other example of maybe 2 co-founders and 3 people running the business. So where if you have 2 co-founders and 3 members of the business, 3 staff, you already have a layer. There's the management layer, and there is the employee layer already. So that's some form of structure. Again, chances are this 2 co-founders, who are running the business will probably have, maybe 2 staff reporting to one person, one reporting to the other. So my point is, except you are, one a business, you can always bring some structuring into your small business. Again, and I'm going to recommend putting some structure in your business, because as you seek to grow the business, people need to fit into something, right? And when I say people, not just employees, even your external stakeholders, who do your vendors relate with for what? You know, you're talking to the same person or different people. So I hope that answers that question. Can we have a copy of the presentation? I am sure the marketing team will get back to everyone on the call. Okay, that has been responded to already. When I think of planning, I think of competitors and how an SME can win against competitors. How can one plan to win a bigger market share? So I think this is a very, very good question. So I'm going to scroll back very quickly to this diagram, right? So Porter's Five Forces is essentially a framework which can help you think about winning against competition. So competitive rivalry here talks about those you're competing with in the same business. And so again, I think the first thing I'm going to say here is you're not only competing against people in the same business, you're competing against suppliers, for instance. So let's talk about, what's a good example to give here? Let's talk about a business that is into building, okay? If you are able to get your, what's it called? Your building materials on credit from your supplier. In other words, you didn't have to pay before the cement and everything needed to build, you know, to do the work. That is extending, you know, your cash runway as opposed to if you had to pay. So that's a form of competition, okay? Then threat of substitution, you know, here, if it is true that your business, you know, your products can be easily substituted, the question is, how will you differentiate? So that's some form of differentiation strategy you need to apply. You know, how would you differentiate between your product and those of other people? Competitive rivalry. We're looking at businesses. Sometimes you want to start from the bottom, right? So Ola, I'm trying to address your question. You know, I don't know what business you're into, you know, but again, I'm going to give a random example. So let's assume you're in the business of consulting, for instance. Are you going to try to compete by providing niche services, meaning a niche can be, you know, by segment or by sector. Oh, we only serve oil and gas. Oh, we're only going to serve SMEs. Are you going to do that? Or, oh, we're only going to offer certain types of services. Are you going to start from there and start to grow? You know, what's going to be your approach? Are you going to partner? You know, because for instance, all of these guys that are competition, you can actually partner with them. You know, so that's what's called co-opetition. Right, so that's like a staff framework of saying, you know, rather than compete with you, I'm going to work with you to increase, you know, share of wallet of, you know, mutual customers or your customers. Right, so those I would say are a few tips. I'm very conscious of the time. I know it's the top of the hour now, but I just want to run through these questions very quickly. So I think with that you can win, you know, bigger market share. More things that come to my mind is, you know, what can you do to vary your product, right? Can you sell your product to, you know, a new market, right? In a new segment. If you're serving, given my previous example, SMEs only, you know, how can you, you know, modify your product to cater to, into larger organizations, right? You know, can you come up with new products, you know, that are, you know, related to what you're doing? Can you diversify, right? So those are ways. Can you partner? I talked about that previously. Yeah, I think that was the last question actually. So I will yield the floor to Deborah. Allow me now. I guess there are no more questions. Right, so just before you go ahead,
Okay, thank you.
Allow me. I'm just going to say something in conclusion.
Okay.
That an annual plan is a plan, and that's just what it is, a plan towards a goal. But I think it's important to remember that this plan is based on conditions. You just did not create a plan from thin air. And so again, this advice, when conditions change and goals are no longer relevant or feasible, my recommendation is be flexible enough to adapt the annual plan, following the organization's defined rigor and process. And perhaps the last phrase is the most important here. You just don't adapt your plan because it's convenient to do so. The plan should have been put in place via a process, and you should follow that same process before changes can be made to it. So thank you very much. Allow me, over to you. Your mic is muted.
All right. Thank you, Okwe. Thank you very much. This has been very insightful. I picked a lot of things myself. And I think I like your concluding statement that says when the plans are no longer relevant, one should be flexible to adapt that plan. And in adapting, you shouldn't just change. You still have to go through that rigor, that same process that you did in the beginning, so that the plan will now be more relevant to the current situation. So that's been very well. So thank you again for the workshop. It wasn't just a presentation. You were able to engage us and the whole audience very well. So thank you very much for that again. So Deborah, could you please share the introductory slides? Yes, I just want to conclude here by just talking a bit more about what we do at BizNurture for the benefits of it. So while I'm waiting for Deborah to share the slides, like I said earlier at the beginning, that BizNurture, we are a alternative financing firm. So we offer loans to SMEs. Yeah. So like the slide here says, we have a solution for every business owner here. We offer LPO financing. We offer invoice discounting. We have working capital loans. If you're a woman in business, we believe that in supporting women. So we have a very different package for women that helps, even gives a lower interest rates and well structured for them. We offer loans to schools and Medilloan. But for me, the most important thing about BizNurture Loan is not just giving you money, but the fact that we are there with our listening ears. We help you, providing direction and advice to you in every way that will help you, making sure that the loan is structured to the way your cash flow comes in is very important, so that you will not have any issues along the way. So like I said earlier, to apply, you can visit our website at biznurture.com to apply for a loan. We cater for businesses in Lagos and Port Harcourt. Yeah, so these are where our main markets are. If you have any questions regarding accessing financing a facility from BizNurture, please do not hesitate to contact us. Calls, WhatsApp, you can send an email to info@biznurture.com or loan@biznurture.com. Any question whatsoever, how to access your loan, how to structure the loans properly in a way that will be very convenient for you to pay. We are here to attend to you. So I think that will be all. So thank you once again. Okay, yes. So I hinted a bit before you go. I hinted a bit that we structure the loans to structure. We make sure our loans help you in a way that will help the repayments comes in easily. But beyond that, we also offer advisory services. There are a couple of services that we offer that it comes in a couple of ways, and I'm just quickly going to just give me a second. I want to be very specific here. While we don't have that on the slide, I'm going to just give you a hint of. So we have business startup services that we offer. So if you are a startup and you're just launching out, we can help you test the idea, business modeling, business planning, even strategic planning. And you can see from the quality of presentation that we have here, we help you put those structures in place to plan the business, because when you want to, so there are different kind of financing you want to access. You want to access loans, funds from, intervention funds from CBN, from, or even equity. You want to have a proper business plan in place. So we come in to help you do all that as well. So we can even have business performance management for you, which is also under the strategic planning, planning management. Then project delivery. So we want to take your project from the idea stage, from the very baby stage, to when you are able to deliver the project at the end of the day. So we come in to support you in that. Then there's business transformation, cost transformation, operational model. You've seen that we're strong on technology, so we come in to advise you on the right kind of technology that will help you take your business. And you know that in this day, we've seen that technology is the only thing that will take you to where you're going in your business. We've seen how businesses that are strong. I mean, for instance, we're here on Zoom, and everybody knows the kind of profit that Zoom, this platform, was able to make last year, just because everybody migrated from physical meetings to digital meetings. So technology is very key in growing your business. So we're also coming to do that for you. So technology advisory definitely is very key. The operational model that has to go. And then finally, we still has to do with technology, is the digital marketing consulting. So I mean, we're now in an age where physical marketing is good, but digital marketing is so powerful that will take you to your business. So we have all encompassing, from giving loans, which are at very competitive rates, to giving you business advisory. So we have everything. So I'd like to say thank you. So to get further information about everything that I've said, please, you could contact us on all the contact details that were shared earlier. So thank you once again for joining us, and have a pleasant evening. So Deborah, you could just share the contact details again on this final slide, and anybody that wants to pick that will be able to pick that. So thank you again for everything.